So let's talk more about Canada's decision to suspend flights from India and Pakistan in an effort to limit the transmission. We do know over the past 2 weeks, for example, that 35 flights from Delhi to Toronto and Vancouver had passengers who eventually tested positive for COVID, though we don't know what precise type they had or if they spread the virus. Joining us now is Bill Blair, the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Good evening, Ian.
So direct flights from India and Pakistan have been suspended because of concerns over the variant. But what about passengers who arrive here from those countries, but on connecting flights via Frankfurt or London?
Well, one of the things we have done is we've implemented measures that will have the effect of breaking or disrupting those connecting flights, only to the extent there are many Canadians, for example, in India and Pakistan, and for them to return. If they choose to use a connecting flight, because there'll be no more direct flights, they'll have to stop in the country in which they would normally transit. You know, transit in connecting flights is either done airside, which means people don't have to actually land in the transiting country, or landside, which would actually require them to. And so what we've put in place is that people traveling from India to Canada, say through the United Kingdom, they'll have to actually land in the United Kingdom and pass through all their regulations and restrictions with respect to entry into their country, and then they'll have to obtain a negative test in the United Kingdom that they can present upon their arrival in Canada.
So as we know, the variants that were first detected in the UK and Brazil not only got into Canada, but they're circulating in Canada. I wonder if that means that our system, including the quarantine system for arriving travelers, hasn't been working.
I think the evidence is overwhelming in virtually every country in the world that there is no absolutely perfect system to keep COVID-19 or its variants out of your country. But the measures that we have put in place are frankly and truthfully some among the most strong and effective in the world. And they have had a very positive effect in slowing down the entry of the virus into this country. Less than 2% of all of the infections in Canada are actually travel-related. The rest the 98% are community transmissions, but 2%, even such a low number, we still believe it's necessary to make every effort to try to slow the introduction of those new variants into Canada. And that's why we've introduced the notice to airmen to stop direct flights, with the steps we've taken to disrupt and break connecting flights. And we'll continue to add layers of protection to slow the advent of this virus down while we do the important work of getting vaccines out to Canadians and in their arms.
We have less than a minute. Minister Patrick Brown, the Mayor of Brampton, is actually calling on Canada to close airports to passenger flights entirely. Has that ever been, will that ever be on the table?
Yeah, I just remind Mayor Brown that there are well over 1 million Canadians who are abroad at any given time, and they have a constitutional right to return to this country, and in many cases have a need to return to this country. Our job is not to prohibit their entry, but rather to make sure we manage it. We manage their return in such a way as to make sure they don't represent a threat to their community or to Canadians, but through the possibility of bringing in the virus. And that's why we've had for over a year a 14-month mandatory quarantine period. We test them before they arrive. We test them when they get here. We test them again. We're putting them up in hotels for a number of days until we get those test results. We've put a great deal of restrictions in. We've added more restrictions to those countries where there's been serious hotspot outbreaks, in the UK initially, and now in India and Pakistan. We'll continue to do what is necessary to manage the return of Canadians, and we have for over a year stopped all non-essential. We banned all non-essential travel into this country by foreign nationals. That prohibition remains in effect.
Minister Blair, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Of course, Ian. Have a good evening.